Welcome back. We have a very exciting guest with us, Mr. Kenneth Funderburk, who's written this awesome book, and you're going to be excited and you're going to be intrigued as he shares with us. Welcome, sir. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing great. It's, as I said a while ago, the weather's great. I feel good, and it's nice to talk to you.
Pleasure to have you. Do us a favor by introduce yourself to our audience and tell them just a little bit about this powerful book that you have.
All right. Of course, I'm Kenneth Funderburk. I was born in Phoenix City and been here all my life, except when I was off in the Army and off in school. And I've practiced law here now for like 55, 56 years in Phoenix City.
My.
So Phoenix City is a different place. And of course, some of the stories I tell are from Phoenix City and surrounding areas. But this book is about, it's really about the cartels and the connection with big business in the United States and how they connect together. And it also throws in essentially the war that exists between the Sinaloa gang and the Zeta and other gangs themselves. So all of that is included in the action.
Yes. Now, what I found when I was reading the book, I look at this clinical psychologist who was also a famous tenor.
Right.
And at the same time, a part-time investigator. I thought, well, that's an interesting dynamic to have those two careers. And when you share in the book, you talk about his girlfriend, Susie, who convinces him to pursue a search for his former friend. And in the pursuit of that, lots of things begin to unfold. Share with our audience some of those intriguing things that you have in this book. I'm simply fascinated by it.
Well, it starts, Chick is not really an investigator, doesn't start that way. He's a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, and a singer, which I like because I sing, but I'm not as good as Chick. And of course, he has a military background. And what happens, he's in school, not really in school, but in the location near Pensacola where his office is. And Susie's in school, she's an instructor. And it starts out, she is pretty wild. She's what you would call a rounder. And it starts out in the beginning where she is in a threesome and she comes in late, and that's all related to another crime that is unrelated to this. She comes in late, and the other two people who were in the bed were killed by the gang because they had stolen a safe that belonged to them.
Yes.
Well, they thought that she could identify them and she had to run. It was one of those things, and she knew Chick, and so she got Chick to help her find out who was after her. And that's how he gets started into this investigation, which really both books deal with the local gang that's associated with the Sinaloa cartel. And so that's how, as this goes along, the cartel, essentially the people that are involved in this initial crime are local agents, you may say, for the cartel, and the guy, Ken, who is the overlord of this area. He is a friend of Chick. Of course, Chick doesn't know that he's head of the local, essentially, cartel.
Yes.
And so the first book ends, and Ken is able to break down and cause the local cartel, which was connected to the cartel, which had its basic operation out of Boston, which, you know, there's a lot of activity in Boston. So basically they kill him, essentially his body disappeared. And we get into the other book where he begins to worry. He knows that she and Ken know that they have broken up a pretty big operation. And that although they lived through that phase, they begin to worry about what the next phase was. And that's when Medusa's Lair starts. So that's how he gets into being an investigator, is chasing the villains who were trying to kill his girlfriend.
Yes.
And so he's not really basically an investigator, but now the family of Ken hire him essentially to go find what happened to Ken. And which the interesting line is, Ken thought that this was a wonderful family because the father of the main crook was a doctor. His sister was a professor at Vanderbilt, and his brother was a doctor. And as the case goes on in the second book, Medusa's Lair, it turns out that Ken's sister, who is Myra, is the real villain. She was the real villain behind Ken. And that's where we get the name Medusa's Lair, when she fully gets involved and essentially takes over the local operation.
I found that quite intriguing as I began to look at this. It was amazing. I thought about, you talk about this gripping tale, a modern day crime fighter on a quest to find a crime boss uncovers an international money laundering enterprise.
Right.
So this thing is international. I mean, you talked about, Boston but this thing goes internationally. I thought, wow, this is a fascinating piece of work here. And then you talk about how it places him in grave danger. I noticed that Susie was concerned because, as you say, her life had been threatened at one time.
Right.
Now she's
her mother.
Yes.
Her mother.
Now she's concerned about reliving this thing again.
Right.
Wow, that's fascinating.
The national part of this is, it's really a story of how the money handlers for the cartels wash their money.
Mm-hmm.
The many different ways they do it. And the controlling point is a bunch of big bankers in Boston. And it goes into detail how they wash some of the money.
Yes.
And so most of that is, I cover every form of washing money you can cover, just about it, in the book, and most of it is the way it's done. So
it's amazing. It's a very complicated system, and you unfold, if you will, and reveal how it's involved in the banking industry. So there are key leaders in the financial institution that are involved in these cartels and this money laundering process.
Well, there's actually some of the words, it was like where they used the legitimate business to hide the illegal business. And it was like the fish that sucks up on a shark. It was sucked and attached to the legitimate business, but remained in the dark because it was a very small entity. Like when they had a big bond issue, well, they had a small part of it they would take, and it would be bearer bonds or some form of that, where it was not big enough to be traceable, where they were not actually operating the business, but they were owning a very small part of a legitimate business.
Yes.
Which was essential to it. Plus, of course, they own ships, and you can transfer a title while you're in a plane, or while you're on a ship. You can start out with a load on a ship and transfer a title many times, so you don't really know who owns it, who bought it, and who owns it when you get there. And all these various ways.
It's the master of disguise, or the cover-up, if you will, or concealing something. when you don't want it to be displayed out in the open. That's amazing. That's amazing. And to see the involvement of the cartel. So this gentleman, I see, sometimes he's called in because he has this gift, this investigator type thing that he does. And so he's called on from time to time to even get involved in different cases that he may help to resolve for the police.
Yeah, he does analysis of people and behavior kind of things and who you look for and the type of people you look for. Of course, most of it, he ends up, going down to Belize and going down to Lake Isabella, which is a marvelous place. So if you're interested in travel, it's a pretty good travel novel. So we create our own ship and how it gets back into shallow water.
Yes, yes.
So
I was looking at that. That was interesting. Interesting. What would be some other key things that you might want to share? I know you don't want to give the entire book away, but there's some things that might be of interest to our audience.
Well, I was interested in the battles between the two cartels, which there were about 3 of them where Sinaloa killed all the high financial guys in Zeta. And then toward the end of this book, they managed to blow up all the big people in Sinaloa, except Sinaloa had changed their method of operation, so the big guy never got blown up.
Wow.
And it was at that point where it became obvious that their main director of investment was Myra.
Wow, that's interesting.
The professor of literature at Vanderbilt.
We want our audience to make sure that they get this book. You have about 60 seconds. Share with our viewing audience how they can get the book if they want to contact you, how they can get in touch with you, email, anything of that nature, and how they can get this book.
They can get the book online with at Apple, at all the booksellers. So just look under Medusa's Lair.
Yes. Yes.
And now, if I get to the next book, we'll deal with the war between the 2 women, which will be quite interesting. So this novel has some, I call it the battle between good and evil. And it ends with Chick analyzing the Messiah, which it starts, he's singing the solos, the tenor solos in the Messiah in Columbus, Georgia at the River Center.
Yes, yes, yes.
Which is one of the best venues I know and the best music school I know.
That is so powerful. I noticed when you talked about it, you talked about as they were driving back to Pensacola and down the travel, he was talking about how he enjoyed performing at the place where he was performing. That's awesome. I tell you, we want our people to go and really get this book. I know it can also be obtained there on Amazon. We want to thank you so much for being our guest. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And listen, for those of you who have been viewing us, thank you so much for tuning in to Spotlight TV. We're glad that you joined us, and we look forward to seeing you again on our next episode.
Thanks, Charles. It's a pleasure talking to you.